He swaggered in his usual flannel shirt and faded denim jeans, but today he was also wearing a smirk on his face as he looked down at my shoes and said, I see you're wearing new boots today. Is that what you do with the money from our sessions? Or do you think you're going to kick my butt with your psycho mumbo jumbo? Well, I was a little taken aback by Michael's unnerving comments, and yet I was used to getting this kind of challenge from him. He liked to spar with me and use sarcasm as a defense in our sessions. Graduate school had not prepared me for this, but growing up with two obnoxious brothers had. And I found the only way that you could soften this sneering is to be playful and give their razzing right back to them. So I put my hands on my hips, screwed up my courage, channeled my best Albert Ellis, and said, yeah, I know you're trying to test me to see if I know what I'm doing and if this therapy thing has been worth your while, so I've got a challenge for you today. He folded his arms across his chest and said, okay, lady, bring it on. Give me your best shot. Now, for all the arrogance emitting out of his 6'2" frame, Michael was actually a rather fragile 34-year-old man who struggled with agoraphobia, depression, alcoholism, and a terrifying fear of crossing bridges. Having a bridge phobia in our town, Chattanooga, Tennessee, is a big problem. After all, we're nicknamed Bridge City, and you can hardly go anywhere without crossing the lake or the meandering Tennessee River that winds its way right through the middle of our town. Having this bridge phobia further locked Michael into the prison of despair he had created in his home. He never admitted to a suicidal plan, but all the signs were there. Hopelessness, isolation, depression, alcohol, and a firearm in his house. I knew we needed to get a breakthrough soon, or he'd give up on therapy, and worse, I feared he'd give up on himself. So I looked him straight in the eye, and I said encouragingly, I think you're ready to cross a bridge. I thought maybe we could go down to the park that's just a few miles from the office. There's a little wooden footbridge there that crosses the Chickamauga Creek. I figured maybe we could go over that, or we don't even have to go over it. Let's just go down there and see how you're feeling around it. That way you can see if what we're doing is working. I'll even meet you there in my kick-ass boots. He said, no, Miss Courtney, I don't need you to go down there and hold my hand. I can do it all by my whittle self. Well, although part of me wanted to slap that snarky smile off his face, I was delighted that he was even considering this challenge. Realizing that what was motivating him was the chance to prove me wrong, I winked at him and said, I know you can do it, but I bet you won't. He said, I bet I will. I'll go do it right after this session. I'll even take a picture of myself on my phone to prove it to you, Miss Smarty Pants. I said, I don't believe it. I bet you $50 you won't do it. Oh. I really hadn't planned on doing that. It just flew out of my mouth before I had a chance to think it through. But now I'd thrown the gauntlet, and it was too late to take it back. He said, you're serious. You'll give me $50 if I go do this today. Hiding behind what little pride I had left. I said, yeah, but I don't have to worry about it because you're so stubborn. I know you won't do it. He said, I bet I will. I'm going to go do it right now. I want my $50. And with that, he ran out of the session, jumped in his car, and drove over to the park. While he was gone, a mixture of excitement and dread churned in my stomach. On the one hand, I was excited that he was facing one of his fears. And on the other hand, a series of disastrous consequences flashed through my mind. I thought, gosh, what if he goes over there and has a panic attack or freaks out? Do I need to be over there to be on standby and support him? What if he does do it and I have to give him $50? Is he going to expect me to give him $50 every time he achieves a goal? Have I just set myself up to be manipulated by this guy? What kind of counter-transference issue triggered this dumb idea? Do I need to go back to therapy? Just then, my phone vibrated, and I looked down, and there Michael had texted me a picture of himself on the other side of the bridge with his tongue sticking out. And the caption, never make a bet with a crazy person. I texted him and said, congratulations. And we still had some time left in the office, so I said, come on back. I'm going to give you your money. I figured it was worth $50 if this got us on a new productive track and boosted his confidence. So when he came back into the office, he was swaggering and grinning from ear to ear, but when he reached out to take the money, his hands were trembling and his face was flushed. And as he received it from me, he bowed his head and began to sob. I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, Michael, that was a big step. You did it, man. You really did it. He goes, I know. I can't believe you got me caught up in that. But I did this. I can do this. I said, yeah, we just had to find something more compelling than your fear to get you to take a risk. After that success, we decided to do some other sessions outside the office, and they got more and more interesting. There was the time that we drove downtown to cross the narrow Market Street Bridge that sits 70 feet high above the Tennessee River. Right before you cross the bridge, there's a stoplight. And as we were sitting at that stoplight, Michael's driving, and he starts to shake. I said, are you okay? And he said, yeah. And when he looked at me, I realized he wasn't panicking. He was laughing. He said, have you seen who's driving the car next to us? And when I looked over, no joke, there's a guy dressed up like Smokey the Bear, driving a yellow Volkswagen. You can't make this stuff up. We both got so tickled, and Michael's fits of giggles dissipated his panic as we were driving across the bridge with Smokey the Bear. He drove back and forth across it 3 or 4 more times, and he was so excited that he was actually overcoming this. Then in another session, we decided to meet at Starbucks so he could face his fear of going into crowded public places. Before we went in, he was pacing a little bit and doing this, and I said, are you all right? You want to just walk around a little more before we go in? He goes, no, I can do this. He goes, you're wearing your damn boots today. I guess I'm going to have to do it. And so then he starts to walk in, and then his panic gave way to snickering when at the counter we see a woman apparently wearing jeans 2 sizes too small, and half of her entire rear end is hanging out of her jeans, and she doesn't have the least bit of self-consciousness about it. I was so thrown off by the spectacle that I tripped over a chair and knocked over an entire box of straws on the counter. Michael just laughed and laughed. When we were leaving, he teased, I guess if that lady and you can go out in public without being embarrassed, I can too. Even though I had to cajole Michael into facing his fears, ironically, it was Michael who cajoled me into facing mine. Before I met with him, I was timid about confronting tough clients. I'd never done a session outside of the office, and I was afraid of taking therapeutic risks for fears that I'd offend the client or make a mistake. But this experience got me thinking, how many times do we hold ourselves back, thinking that therapy can only be done in the confines of our office as we maintain a reserved, composed presence? How many times do we think we've got to have all the answers, avoid making mistakes, or control all the feelings that are coming up for us in sessions? Now, granted, if I made a bet with all my clients or acted on every feeling that came up for me in a session, I'd be out of business. But these experiences with Michael taught me that sometimes clients benefit from seeing our vulnerability, our humanness, our tears, our fears, and most of all, our willingness to take risks and even make fools out of ourselves as we model how to deal with our own imperfections. Doing so can free our clients up to do the same and discover their courage to change and how to pick themselves up when things don't go as planned. After that, Michael began to get courage to overcome even more fears, and what really made a difference was when he got the courage to start going to 12-step meetings and entered a recovery program. He also worked diligently in our sessions to heal the pain of growing up with an aloof, alcoholic father, another source of his anxiety and depression. He even invited his father to a session, another bridge he'd long feared to cross because they hadn't spoken for years. His father was receptive, and beginning to work things out with his father was instrumental in his healing. Michael wrote me recently and told me that he was still crossing bridges, maintaining his sobriety, And he and his father were actually getting along pretty well. At the end of the letter, he told me, "You've got a strange way of doing therapy, but I just want you to know you helped me. In fact, you saved my life." I had no idea that making a bet that day would open a new door for me, Michael, and even his father. But I'm glad I took the risk and crossed that bridge. Thank you.